Most people think Scorpio holds grudges. That is not what is happening. A grudge is passive. It sits in the background and festers. What Scorpio experiences after betrayal is something far more deliberate and far more complete. It is a restructuring, a full internal reclassification of who a person is, what they mean, and what access they are allowed going forward. Understanding this process changes everything about how you see your own responses to betrayal, and it changes what you can do with them. When someone betrays Scorpio's trust, something specific happens inside the emotional processing system. The person does not simply lose points. They do not move down a tier of closeness. They are reclassified entirely. Scorpio operates with a binary internal model of people, inside the circle or outside the circle. This is not a conscious choice. It is the natural output of the trust architecture we discussed in the last video. Building the trust architecture takes time. It requires consistent signal alignment, behavioral evidence, emotional congruence over multiple interactions. The person who made it inside the circle earned that position through a long and specific process. When they betray that position, the process does not simply reverse, it collapses. The emotional investment Scorpio made, the access they granted, the vulnerability they allowed, all of it becomes retroactively dangerous. Because the threat was not external, it was internal. It came from someone who was already inside. That is why the reclassification is total. Partial trust with someone who has already demonstrated the capacity to breach it is not a viable emotional position for Scorpio. The system does not allow for it. People who have been reclassified by Scorpio often cannot understand why there is no path back. From the outside, it looks like stubbornness, like an inability to forgive, like pride. From the inside, it is something completely different. Scorpio's emotional model is built on the premise that trust is a binary state. It is either structurally sound or it is not. A bridge that has collapsed once has demonstrated a structural failure. You do not continue to cross it by being more careful. You find another route or you do not cross at all. This is not cold, it is precise. The middle ground that other people expect, the partial trust, the cautious re-engagement, the slow rebuilding, requires Scorpio to hold two contradictory emotional states simultaneously. This person is safe, and this person has already shown they are not safe. That contradiction is not something Scorpio can sustain. It is not emotional rigidity. It is the natural output of a system that was built on the detection of incongruence. Holding someone in a state of partial trust generates constant low-level incongruence. The system reads that as ongoing threat. Reclassification resolves the contradiction. And resolution, even painful resolution, is more tolerable than sustained ambiguity. Here is what rarely gets discussed about Scorpio and betrayal. The primary wound is the betrayal itself, but the secondary wound is often more damaging in the long term. The secondary wound is this. After the reclassification, Scorpio begins to audit everything that came before. Every interaction with that person is re-examined through the new information. Moments that felt genuine are reread as performance. Warmth that felt real is reread as strategy. The entire relational history is reconstructed. This audit is not paranoia. It is the congruent scanner running backwards through stored data, looking for the moment the signal first diverged from the reality. The problem is what this process does to Scorpio's sense of their own perception. If you miss the incongruence, then what else are you missing now? If that person was not who you believe them to be, how calibrated is your scanner really? This is where betrayal creates its deepest damage in Scorpio. Not in the loss of the person, in the temporary loss of confidence in their own emotional intelligence. And because emotional intelligence is one of the things Scorpio identifies with most deeply, the secondary wound touches identity directly. The way through this is not to stop auditing. It is to understand what the audit is actually telling you. When Scorpio re-examines a relational history after betrayal and finds moments they missed, that is not evidence that the scanner failed. It is evidence that the person was genuinely skilled at concealment. These are different conclusions with completely different implications for how you move forward. A scanner that missed a sophisticated deception is not broken. It was operating correctly on incomplete data. That is not a failure of perception. That is the limit of what any detection system can do against deliberate manipulation. The distinction matters because it determines what you carry forward. If you conclude the scanner failed, you either overtrust it going forward, tightening it until almost no one can pass, or you stop trusting it entirely, which leaves you without your most precise relational tool. If you conclude the scanner was deceived, you carry something different. Not self-doubt, discernment. A more refined ability to distinguish between someone who is genuinely incongruent and someone who is skilled at performing congruence. That distinction is the difference between betrayal making you more isolated and betrayal making you more precise. Scorpio does not hold grudges. Scorpio restructures. And while that restructuring can look like coldness from the outside, from the inside it is one of the most psychologically demanding processes a person can go through. The reclassification, the audit, the secondary wound to self-trust. None of that is passive. None of it is easy. What it can become, with awareness, is transformative. Every time Scorpio moves through this process consciously, they emerge with a more calibrated emotional system. Not a more guarded one, a more precise one. In the next video, we look at something that happens before betrayal becomes possible, the process by which Scorpio decides who gets close in the first place. Because the tests Scorpio runs before granting access are not what most people think they are. And most Scorpios have never recognized them as tests at all. That is what we are doing next.